Hello, and welcome to another session of some authentic relating facilitation where you get to practice being as honest and authentic as you are able to be in the moment, while also doing that in a way that is relational and really with yourself and with another person. So go grab a friend, a lover, a family member, or maybe even a stranger, someone that you're wanting to have an experience of being seen with in this moment and of seeing. And we'll jump into the practice. If you are already familiar with authentic relating, you can find the timestamps below where you can jump in at the connect to self, at the connect to other. There will also be some explanation of the practice as we go along. Today's practice is going to be a little bit more what I would call edgy or spicy. We're going to be exploring what is getting in the way of us being closer to one another. And while we're exploring that, the person who is listening, I really encourage you to just listen with the question in mind of what's true for the person that I'm listening to. You're going to be listening to their body language, to their tone, and then we're going to be going through prompts where we really stay with the person who is currently sharing. And as we're doing this, I really want you to track whenever you want to get into fixing, explaining, giving advice, justifying, defending, rescuing. Just notice any urges that come up because these urges often get in the way of us actually being with and getting to a place of actual resolution or closeness. Depending on how close you are with the person that you're sharing with, it might be really easy to listen, or it might be really hard to listen to whatever's going to come up in this space. And person who's sharing, while we're in an authentic relating practice, we are practicing meeting our edge in vulnerability, but we're not performing the vulnerability Olympics. So as you're sharing, I really encourage you to tune into where is my area of growth? If you think of it like we have our area of comfort, it's really easy to be there, we're used to it. We have our area of growth, which is where we can kind of stretch into. And then we have our area of harm. So it's like, if I try to go that far, I'm going to end up giving myself an injury because I haven't worked up to it yet. So I really encourage you to be in the growth zone. All of that being said, I noticed that I would really benefit from just receiving some deeper breaths. So and in a moment, I'm going to guide us in what is called connected to self. And I encourage you to, before I do that, arrange yourselves in such a way that you will be looking at each other, that it's going to be easy for you to look at one another when you come out of the connect to self. And just taking a moment. You can adjust in any way that you need to that helps you be a little more available to yourself. And so what that looks like in this moment might be eyes open, it might be a softened gaze, it might be eyes closed. And just notice how You're receiving your breaths in this moment. Noticing the different sensations that are present with you. And what kind of thoughts are here with you in this moment? And what emotions do you notice? Are you holding your experience close, pushing it away, or maybe just being with it, whatever it is? And what shifts or doesn't shift as you're with your experience? And as you're here, maybe you can start to bring in a sense that you haven't noticed. Maybe it's feel of your clothes or your body in the seat. Maybe it's something you can smell. How does it impact you to take that in? What changes in your experience? And if your eyes are closed, you can slowly start to let some of your sight in, looking around, not quite coming back into connection with the other human or humans here. But just coming into connection with your environment visually. And what do you notice in your internal world as you take this in? And then in time, coming into connection with the person in front of you. And how does this impact you to be in this experience now, here? And in a moment, one of you are going to touch your nose, and you will be the first person to share. And the other person, you will be the first person to listen. So, a few pieces of context for this time that we'll be sharing together. While the timer is still going, it is the person who has received the prompts time to share. And what that means is that there might be moments of silence, and I really encourage both parties to just be in the silence until either more comes up from the person whose turn it is to share, or the timer goes off and a new prompt is given to someone. That while we're in this space, we do our best to speak from I statements. So, I have an experience that, I feel, I believe, rather than the truth is, everyone loves the holidays, or you know when you get the golden ticket and you just feel so happy. So that's what we're not going to do. These you statements, maybe complaining like, you just don't understand me and you don't listen to me. Like, I don't feel heard sometimes. So, speaking from I statements. And that we're doing our best to provide a supportive environment to one another, and recognizing that it's a gift when someone shares themselves vulnerably with us. That being said, person who first touched your nose, you are going to get 2 minutes to share, and you can restart the prompt anytime you want. Something that's getting in the way of us being closer is. And listener, you are just listening in silence until the timer is done. Even if your sharer says, I think that's all, I encourage you both just to be there in silence, taking breaths together, coming in and out of eye contact. Okay, 2 minutes. Something that's getting in the way of us being closer is. Listener, it's your turn. You now get to share for 1 minute what I think I heard you say was. And then you're going to do your best to reflect back what you heard your sharer share with you. Pulling out the highlights, maybe what was important, what seemed like what was important to them, etc. What I think I heard you say was. Sharer, you now get to, for 1 minute, add anything that you want to add now that you've received your reflection, or adjust anything that didn't seem quite right. 1 minute. Listener, you now get to get curious and ask your sharer a question. Then, sharer, you get to answer the question. You'll have 2 minutes total for this. So, listener, ask your question, sharer, answer the question. And once the sharer starts answering, again, I encourage listener for you to just listen in silence and let them speak. 2 minutes. listener, it's your turn to ask again. This time, I'm going to give you the question, and so you're going to ask, how would you like me to respond? And sharer, you are going to take a moment and really reflect. How do I want them to respond? Do I want them to reflect back to me? Do I want them to share impact? What was it like for them to hear what I said? Do I want them to respond to anything? Do I want them to answer a question? So, listener, how do you want me to respond to you? And speaker, you get to share how you want them to respond. And then listener, you get to respond in that way. And there might be a little bit of negotiation, but for example, if your speaker says, I would love for you to tell me what you heard me say. You can do that. I would love for you actually just to hold me for these next 2 minutes. Could you do that? 2 minutes. And lastly, listener, you now get to share something that I think I'm getting about you to your speaker. 1 minute. Taking a breath if that feels good to both of you. And letting these roles fall away. And now we will switch roles. So if you were just the sharer, you'll now be the listener. And if you were just the listener, you will now be the sharer. So, new sharer, you now have 2 minutes to share something that's getting in the way of us being closer is. Listener just listening in silence, taking it in. 2 minutes. Listener, you now have a minute to reflect back. What I think I heard you say was, is that right? So, speaker, sharer, you now have a minute to add anything you want, adjust anything that didn't quite sit right. 1 minute. Listener, you now have a moment to get curious and ask a question. And speaker, you get to answer the question. You have 2 minutes total. And again, once the sharer is sharing, I encourage listener for you to just listen. So listener, you'll ask the question, sharer, you'll answer it. 2 minutes total. Listener, you now get to ask, how do you want me to respond? And sharer, you get to ask. You two might negotiate, or listener, you might be more than happy to give exactly what is being asked for. And you have 2 minutes. Listener, your last give back to your sharer for now. Something that I think I'm getting about you is, what are you noticing feels important to your sharer? What their deeper why might be, what they value. Something I think I'm getting about you is 1 minute. And coming back to silence together, receiving a breath if that feels good, and letting the rolls fall away. You will now have 3 minutes to have an open debrief. This is just a open flow dialogue, no roles. Maybe anything that surprised you, what stood out, what that was like for you, what it's like to be you now, or something else. 3 minutes. bringing all of that to a close. Thank you for joining in this slightly spicier, potentially edgier practice of authentic relating today, for allowing yourself to be seen, to be vulnerable. And if you're curious about learning more about authentic relating, find it down in the links below. If you want to do a live workshop with live support, links down below. If you want one-on-one services, again, link down below. Thank you. Until next time.